We are live.
All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this series of three webinars. And before we start, I will just introduce myself. My name is Uncastro. I'm going to be your host for this session. Uh, Actually, my background comes from computer science, but as I start my work career, I took a special interest for agile practices, and then I became an agile consultant, and now I spend most of my time teaching innovative ways of working. Besides that, I'm also a trainer and a lecturer, and I take special interest in agile sales and marketing. And on the weekends, I like to go to the sea and get some waves. So if you guys want to talk about any of these topics, feel free to drop me an email or to connect with me via LinkedIn. And I'm always willing to talk about these topics. Just drop me a line, and for sure we can get 15 20 minutes to talk about any of these matters. Today's webinar is going to be how to go from project to product and why it matters. But this is just the first webinar of a series of three. So the next 4th of March, we'll also have another webinar that will talk about how to make a start with an agile framework, and in this case, SAFe. Why SAFe? Well, SAFe is the leading framework when we talk about scaling agile. Probably the best one and the one that is the higher rate of use these days. So we decided to bring you guys a little bit more of expertise in this matter and how can you implement this in your companies. And to finish with our series of webinars, we will be talking about if you'd like to become a safe consultant, how is that path? How can you do it? We will have Suki, Ingbar, and David talk with you guys and how can you make this path if you are trying to upskill or reskill or looking for a job in the as an agile consultant or a safe consultant. This is the webinar for you. We will learn everything about the path and this framework. This webinar is brought to you by for companies. On the right, we have Task Top, is Mix company. Mix is our special guest for tonight, and this company, Task Top, is a value stream management solution that provides organizations with end-to-end visibility on their software delivery. Then we have Scaled Agile. As you might know, Scaled Agile, the inventor of SAFe, and these webinars will focus a lot on this framework, on SAFe. And then we have the Agile Thinkers in partnership with Attack Portugal, is the company where I work at, Agile Thinkers. And besides organizing events, we also do consultancy, and we co-organize a conference that we call Experience Agile. Experience Agile is a conference that happens every year where we try to get together the biggest people in the Agile community to bring you guys with awesome content. Last year, unfortunately, we couldn't do a presential conference, but we do a remote one. It was very nice. And this year we will have greater news, and we are preparing some surprises for the community. So stay tuned and go to the website experienceagile.org, because in the next days we will launch news there that will amaze the community for sure. On today's panel, we have three speakers. Starting on the left, we have Hugo Lorenzo. Hugo Lorenzo is the CEO and founder of the Agile Thinkers, also the CEO and founder of the World Agility Forum and Experience Agile. Hugo is very experienced with any Agile framework. He's been doing this for more than 10 years. And is at the moment also teaching innovative ways of working to his clients, and mostly trying to coach and help leadership of the companies to embrace the agility. On the right end, we have Andrew Sells. Andrew is a SAFe fellow and an SPT principal consultant, and he also parts of the Scaled Agile organization, and he has been supporting organizations with agile transformation for the past 10 years. like Hugo, very experienced in Agile, especially in Safe. So if you have any questions regarding Safe, you can just pop it in the chat, and Andrew for sure will be willing to answer them. And last but not least, our special guest for this session, Dr. Mick Kirsten is the founder and CEO of TaskTop. He's a best-selling author with his book, Project to Products. I advise you guys to go to the website producttoproduct.org. You will find very good content there, or even buy the book if you want a guide on how to survive and thrive in the digital era, and how to implement the flow framework that for sure Mick will be talking to you in this session. So just pop by the website, consider buying the book. It's a very good book, very handy. I will recommend it to anyone. And without further ado, feel free to go to the chat. You can pop any questions you want, or in the chat or in the Q&A. And to kickstart this webinar, I would like to ask a question to Mick, maybe. So Mick, are you there? Can you?
I am, yes. Thanks for the great introduction,
Perfect. So Mick, actually I have two questions for you. I would say first one is, where does the idea from your latest book came from, and why it's so hard to get onto the way of working? Why it's so hard to get flow in a company that is already running in the business? So where does the idea come from, and why it's so hard to get this flow, and then the idea of flow, and how did you reach it?
Yeah, so for me, I think like for a lot of people who've, including David here and Andrew, we've spent a lot of our careers helping organizations transform, become more agile. And I think for me, it was really from a profound frustration on how basically good the state of the practice was becoming with things like the Scaled Agile framework, right? It's a great set of principles and method, things that you should be able to very quickly apply and succeed with at scale. And it's meant for scaling, and it's very nicely adopted to large, complex organizations. Yet what I was seeing is just all of these failures to get value from these transformations. And I realized that even though we've got we've got great technologies, we've got cloud technologies, we've got very modern development stacks, we've got great agile practices, we've got mature DevOps and CI/CD practices. Why is it that organizations who are trying so hard to transform are failing to get the benefits, are failing to get to business agility, which in the end is one of the key goals of the Scaled Agile framework, some of the goals of digital transformation. And I realized that there was just this mismatch between the people who were helping the organization apply the concepts of SAFE, as you mentioned, I think is the framework that we see most adopted across the enterprise. Basically, those concepts were being adopted by teams, and they were not quite being adopted by the business. There's just this mismatch between how the business looked at agility and transformation and how the technical teams and everyone in the transformation office, all of the consultants were looking at them. And so I realized that until we got the organization on the same page around that, we would have this problem. We would have the business basically creating the wrong conditions for a safe deployment or an agile transformation to succeed. And that one of the most profound of these problematic conditions was treating everything as projects and cost centers. So what's happened with so many organizations, I was like, some of you work with these organizations, some of you work in these organizations, is that we've had this long history of cost centers being how IT is run and managed. Right? We think of IT as cost. We think of actually, and this is, the presentation that I just came off of was the executives at a large bank shifting everything to cloud, but thinking, now I'm realizing, wow, they're thinking of the benefits of cloud as just another way of reducing cost. Whereas if you look at how a tech company thinks, you look at a successful safe implementation, you're actually looking at anything like cloud, like upskilling your teams, like deploying new tools and methodologies as a way to drive better business value faster, right? As a way to get business agility and create that feedback loop. So what I realized is we have to elevate some of the concepts of safe to make them measurable and actionable to the entire organization. And that's really where the flow framework and the flow metrics come from. It's to take those same ideas that you're deploying, that you're working with it in SAFe, and to make sure that you're elevating them so the business starts measuring value that way, right? So what I've seen, and I've worked with both Dean Leffingwell and Steve Maynard on some of these concepts, is why do we ever see, why would a safe deployment fail, right? When again, and the interesting thing is, why would anyone blame their failure on something in SAFe? SAFe is a great set of practices. I know I use them, our customers successfully use them. So the failure modes, and this is straight from Steve Maynard's list, is just as an example, when everyone who's probably listening right now is doing all the right things, but the organization somehow starts focusing on vanity metrics, right? You start measuring the number of arts as a metric, right? And then you have more arts, or you start measuring ceremonies. You completely overload your organization. So you expect them to both do the transformation at the same time as you're trying to expect them to deliver more. And so you drive up organizational overload, and you never give your people a chance to actually improve their work practices. So there's the set of failure patterns. Steve has, again, we can touch on these if it makes sense, documented a set of 7 of these patterns. I realized, okay, how can we actually provide the organizational support to make a safe transformation successful? And what I realized is, by exposing the dynamics of flow, the fact that when we overloaded our arts and the teams working on them, we got less out, and our business partners were more upset, not less, right? We overloading our teams is counterproductive. Putting too much work in progress, or in the flow framework, the metric is flow load, actually made things worse, not better. But when we actually measured the flow of value, when we started measuring things like technical debt, and we celebrated teams who were completing enablers, not just completing features, wow, we actually got more out in that PI. So really my whole goal was to basically expose some of the problematic organizational dynamics that make agile transformation so difficult, to expose them with these very high level flow metrics that the business side can understand. Because I think as technologists, it's all it all seems quite obvious what we should be doing, what we're doing, and then to create this basically this feedback loop of being able to actually measure your safe implementation roadmap, right? And provide value to the business, and then actually have a concrete way of saying, wow, we reduced flow time. And by deploying SAFe on this art, and we reduced it by 30%. And we should now, with that, think of the business value we unlocked. We should scale that across the entire organization. So it's really that was the goal, is to provide a new way of measuring that was really less around what we've become good at technology, and taking that and making sure that these could become the organizational metrics, the organizational KPIs, the organizational OKRs, to help basically demonstrate and drive agile transformations.
I was just going to jump in, Mick, and add to that, because you said something at the beginning, which was about taking agility outside of technology, extending it to the business. And as you know, SAFe 5, we took that message out there to really try and make it clear that when we talk about value streams, it's not just the IT domain or the solution developers, it's everyone who's involved in contributing to the creation of value. And to go on what you said about the metrics, one of the things we see, Nuno, is that if the metrics are designed to just focus and measure one part of the system, be it the IT or the technology portion, you can make those metrics look fantastic, but they're never going to give you an indication of whether you're improving flow. And actually what we're finding, Mick, a lot of the time is when we go in companies, they've made great strides and improvements in the technology domains. We're finding sometimes now that the delays have been pushed either earlier in the value stream or later, as they try and align around the strategy or try and release the value. So it's very dangerous if you're focusing just on one part of the system. And yeah, like you said, the flow metrics you put out there, Mick, have been great to help people take a much wider view and just step back and try and measure things end to end. So we see that a lot as well.
And so Andrew, that's actually a key point that Andrew made, right? Is that there tends to be a lot of maturity in how teams are managing the burn down charts, how they're counting their story points and so on. But so often the bottlenecks, just as Andrew said, are upstream or downstream of the agile teams. The teams have a sense for it because it's where their weight states come from. we need to have a way of measuring that so that, again, the teams stop getting blamed for something that's a constraint in the business. When, there's a, business analysis is a bottleneck, or requirements keep changing, or scopes keep changing mid-PI, right? Like that's a classic one, by the way. When we're deploying the flow framework with SAFe, and think of the flow framework as it's not a framework like SAFe, it's just a way of measuring that up-level things for the business. All of a sudden, the effect of scope changes on velocity and throughput is instantly visible, right? Of course, everyone here knows the effect of scope changes on velocity and what happens when teams are thrashing. But really, that's exactly the goal, is to make the dynamics of what sometimes the business is causing to happen for Agile teams visible, and then make it quicker to correct.
Yeah, I also like to add one or two things. So something that was quite impressive at the Mick book, it was the Three Epiphanies. So, and sometimes I also have the same epiphanies. Like, for example, when we go to some companies and when we try to speak about flow and impediments, dependencies, and what drives everything, that flow efficiency is quite low, sometimes I tell them, once upon a time, I go to my garage and I say, oh, damn, it's everything. I need to take everything out of my garage. And every time I clean up, I took everything outside, I prioritize, I send a lot of things that are waste, I move it away from the way I want, and I reprioritize everything in the shelves, and I say, great work. Yeah, the only problem is I made that prioritization based on what I have known from till today. That tells me that sooner or later, I will need to do that again. So for some companies, basically that's what they are kind of driving. So they move everybody away, they change all the value streams, they move away everything, but what they know till today. So sooner or later, that will not be effectively working, because it's not organic what they are doing. And when we have our implementation snake, what we are trying to do is to coverage from an end to end, right? So from top down, bottom up, we try to cover everything so we can cover all the things. The other approach is, like also in Mick's book, there is a chance. How? Well, if you move away from project and you go to a product, that's also a great opportunity. By starting from the scratch a new product, even with the people you have today, you can invite other providers and other people with a lot of knowledge. And like at BMW, so why don't we buy a car? Why don't we build a car where we build it right at the shop? At the shop floor, we start building the car. Visitors come into the shop, they give feedback, and we share and we learn, and that will be the value stream, and that will be the essence. So the Three Epiphanies, for me, it was kind of a great kind of flavor. So because sooner or later, we will always have the same epiphanies, right? So that was kind of some of the takeaways that when I got it to understand, yeah, and this is what companies, it's so hard for them to change anything because they got what they know by now, and they try to inspect and adapt with the same eyes or from all the things they have seen from the past and not looking to the future. And by taking the opportunity for doing something from the scratch and a little bit away from all the policies, procedures, processes, and all those instruments that they have in place that make them successfully till today, how they can go so a way they can start with a nice flow right from the beginning. So what do you think about all these, guys?
I was just going to jump in quickly. That's exactly the challenge. And I know, Mick, you described this in your book as well. The systems they're using today to run these organizations were systems designed for a prior period. And often these are the systems that are also used to roll out the transformation, the changes that they're adopting. And it can be a real challenge. And we see this all the time as we start to organize around value and try and put flow in place. People get concerned because they're losing the power they had in their departments. They don't understand how to manage in this new way. The funding changes. So it's extremely disruptive. But one thing I will say, Hugo, is that what I like about the flow metrics is even before we make or implement a change, we can actually highlight some of the struggles that we have with flow. We can start to let the value streams emerge by looking at the data. And I don't know, Mick, whether that's something that you recommend or you do, but getting those measurements in there really builds a sense of urgency, I think, and opens the leader's eyes to needing to make a change and look at things in a different way. It's almost an objective starting point rather than just a feeling that they have something is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I can relate this. There's a question from Rick Martin, which I love here. So I'm going to just read it out. Part of the challenge with transformation is not being agile in the transformation, iterative and incremental. Agile transformation is done with waterfall approach, to your point, Andrew, right? We're using the old ways of doing things to actually measure the transformation. And then this is, I just did this exec roundtable last week with Brian Solis, and he's a futurist, sort of digital transformation futurist. He's the key thing he's been saying, which has been really resonating with me, is that 2021, and this is kind of COVID inspired, is the death of the 2-year transformation project, right? We have to, and the companies who are succeeding at this have to become incremental and flow oriented and measure progress in the transformation. So the challenge is, I think, exactly what Andrew just said, which is if you've got the transformation itself being waterfall and being measured with an old set of metrics, and the kind of where the epiphanies and project to product, thanks David, really come from, is the fact that we're using these project and activity and cost center metrics to measure transformation. That doesn't work. You have to measure value, right? And the key thing I'm realizing is really important to emphasize now is you need a fast, to Rick's point, you need a fast feedback loop for measuring value. So the challenge I've seen, because I've personally been talking a lot about, okay, well, you need to, the whole point of deploying safe, of the roadmap sake is that you're delivering more value to the business. Yeah. However, the really tricky thing about this is a bunch of the value metrics and the way the business thinks about them take a year to manifest, right? Driving let's say a revenue number. Driving a revenue number can take actually having a significant portion of the organization become agile and having adopted safe. So what I realized, and this is where, this is really part of a big motivation on the flow metrics, is we need a faster feedback loop, right? We need a loop where we're seeing, before you're preparing on the next start, you've already measured success from the first one. And the challenge is, while the flow framework puts out business results, like with safe, we're all around in the end driving a business result. We need a leading indicator of whether things got better. So the way I've been approaching this with teams is just to say, pick one flow metric. And usually it's usually the best one, by the way, I've noticed is, and this will depend obviously, but is flow time. Right? If we can, in the implementation roadmap, if we start measuring flow time, and we see actually in the first couple months of actually deploying safe, we're seeing flow time reduce. You have it. Flow time is felt very quickly by the business side, right? Because it's how quickly they're getting their features implemented, their products to market. It's the time to value metric. We can create that faster feedback loop that in the end, all it's going to do is basically provide data for why you should lean further into your transformation and into your implementation roadmap, rather than waiting a year or two for people to see results. And then again, the challenge there is measuring the wrong things, applying the old industrial metrics to trying to understand business agility and software value streams. So I guess this is kind of back to answering the start of your question. That was really one of my main motivations is, we understand how things are getting better, how the teams are working better. We need a way to elevate that to the business to break through those old measurement paradigms, and establish that faster feedback loop. And yeah, I think that the key thing is, on this roundtable, like it was interesting because there were about 30 executives, IT executives, and when Brian Solis and I said 2021 is the death of the 2-year transformation, just half of the people squirmed, because most of them have just set up a 2-year transformation project. So, but yeah, I think that's the key thing. We have to. I think Rick's question is so key.
Hugo, I see we have a question. I wonder whether, Mick, this would be a good time for you to answer this question. It's from Tom. It's really just asking if you could give a brief summary of the flow metrics framework, or just to add a bit of detail to what we're talking about when we keep referring to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'm assuming, we've got like a high degree of, familiarity with value streams, right? Like Safe for many years now has had people thinking the right way about value streams. And so what I've been spending all my time thinking about is how can we effectively measure and at scale measure flow in those value streams. And I think as Andrew said earlier, is the key thing is it needs to be measured end to end. We've become very good at doing things like measuring cycle time of user stories in Jira. That's easy, right? But when you've got bottlenecks upstream or downstream of the development team, those are the kinds of things that we need to measure. So Safe is fundamentally, provides this end-to-end view. So the problem is, given that these value streams start with business work being planned, or new initiatives, and really what's coming out of PI planning, how do we measure? And sometimes it'll actually come from business strategy. It'll come from things from like OKRs or strategic plans and so on. How can we measure all the way from when work starts with the value stream to where work ends? And so the flow framework introduces just a simplification of the work item taxonomy in Safe. So every single work item in Safe maps to one of these 4 flow items, which are really meant to make the trade-offs to the business clear. And those are features, defects, risks, and debts. So the idea is that every value stream can only, you've got a zero-sum game. You've got basically, if you're doing more features, you're going to do less risk work. If you've just put a ton of risk and compliance work on your teams, you'll do fewer features. If your tech debt is catching up to you, defects will rise. So it's to expose those fundamental dynamics that we understand in this richer taxonomy that Safe provides, with enablers, with all of the different types of work that we do, and to the teams keep working exactly with that. And we've got a more abstract way of measuring those with the flow items, and then these 4 flow metrics. So flow time, that's just time to market, but it's not cycle time. It's not how long, which is really important. It's not how long it takes the Agile team to close a story or a business epic. It's actually all the way from when that thing showed up in some project management tool, right? Which is often where those things work, right? And all the way to you've got running software, because so often what we've actually measured in organizations is that the Agile team will be done and you've got 3, 4, 5 weeks before that feature is released. So the whole goal again is to measure that value stream end to end, and flow time gives you the customers or the business's perspective of when something was done. And by the way, I should mention that because my whole goal here was to make the principles of Agile and of Safe visible to the business, it's a super high level. So for example, there are no story points in flow metrics, right? Story points are critical. Weighted storage job first, those are really important principles, but the flow framework just says, okay, across a value stream, which is say up to 10 Agile teams, you've got this is your flow. So it's this very high level view of flow. If you actually want to see what a bottleneck was, or see why this particular business epic with way too many story points on it is causing so much problems, you actually then go down to that level. But this is really to give a high level view of flow to the organization, and simplify with a simple set of metrics. So I just mentioned flow time. There's flow velocity, which is just a throughput metric. Flow efficiency, flow efficiency is key. It's the ratio of active work to wait states. So it's for finding your bottlenecks, because again, so often that bottleneck is not within the Agile team. It's dependencies between teams or dependencies upstream or downstream of the teams. And that's what flow efficiency identifies. And then flow load. So flow load is a work in progress metric. It's how much work has been dumped on the teams, because what's happening across organizations is too much work is being dumped on the teams. Teams are thrashing, they can't keep up, backlogs keep growing. And if you actually reduce work in progress, if you reduce flow load, you will get more throughput out and you'll have much happier teams. So the goal is to basically expose those dynamics through these flow metrics, so that project managers, product managers, business partners can't ignore them. And the other key thing, so that as part of PI planning, things like progress on enablers and technical debt reductions are actually celebrated, right? Those are visible to the business, because one of the big things I uncovered is it's often not, right? The only thing that's getting prioritized on these project plans is requirements, is feature work, not some of the things that good technology organizations know are critical, which is actually providing enough bandwidth to those enablers. So yeah, those are the flow metrics. It's just meant to expose the dynamics at a team level to help basically planning and prioritization. So, but keep in mind, zero support for like it's not the flow framework does not, and flow metrics don't help you at all with actual prioritization. Nothing says you should do this business epic over that business epic. None of that is there. It's just at this much higher level. So
Mick, for sure that the metrics that you describe, they are not trivial to measure. I would like to ask you, can you tell us practically how can a company could start and how can it install and use a measurement framework? How would you advise them to start measuring the things in the practical side of things?
Sure. So I think one thing is, and this is where I think the way not to do it is to go and tell the teams to change how they work, right? So SAFe provides a great way for the teams to work and to do agile planning and review and all of that. Don't change any of that, right? I've seen these things where someone's read the book and they take the 4 flow items and they rename all the Jira issue types. Don't do that. Those should actually continue to match the SAFe work item types, right? Because again, the flow framework is meant to be a layer above, and that's really the point of value stream management. It's a layer above. The way that teams work, keep going with that. So what you do is you need some kind of view that layers over the Agile tool, but also the service desk tool, also the project or product management tool, and then you basically map every single work item type into one of the 4 flow item types. And you can do that, TaskUp provides tools to do that. You can do that through, when I was experimenting early on with the flow framework, like 7 years ago, I was just doing this, we were doing this purely through Tableau, right? And getting views on that. So just create, but the key thing is make this visibility of flow a layer over the Agile and DevOps and PPM and other tools. Because you want to see across those tools, and you don't, again, what's happening with the SAFe implementation roadmaps today with Agile tools today, I think is the right thing. It's a solved problem. I think that should not really be disrupted. So yeah, so just create that layer over top of the Agile tool, and then just start. I think the key thing is there's a way of mapping. So here's a key one. When we deploy with TaskUp, when we're deploying the flow framework into a mid-sized, large-sized SAFe shop, one of the first things, there's 2 key things we notice, right? One of the first things is technical debt is almost never visible. So, you've got however, there's all these good practices on looking at tech debt, right? You've got the Martin Fowler quadrant of tech debt. But the challenge is Jira never had a template with tech debt in it or enablers in it, right? So it was never properly set up. So the key thing is that all of the, one of the first steps is to make sure that each of the 4 flow item types is visible somewhere in the Agile tool schema, right? Because developers know when you take a shortcut, or you've deployed some older version of a framework because you didn't have time to do the new one, or look at the new one, that needs to go into the backlog, right? And that needs to go in the backlog as a future enabler that you're going to look at. So just kind of make sure that the information is all there, so that you're not, because I don't know what others' experiences are, but it's amazing to me how rare, and especially in large organizations, actual use of enablers as an issue type is. That has to be there. Like, you can't just be skipping things, or you won't be able to get that visibility in the end of trade-offs between features, defects, risks, and debts. You need to make sure that the workflow states, for flow efficiency to work, workflow states need to indicate in the Agile tool when a team is blocked, and ideally what they're blocked on, right? So if you've got an organization where you've got a lengthy security review process or some kind of compliance process, that should be a state, because in the end, we need, like, for the flow metrics to work, for something like flow efficiency to work, that needs to be visible as well. And then of course, then what's there in your, again, the team should only ever have to work with their Agile tool and with their with how they're using SAFe. But to be able to have that right layer, you need to be able to model these value streams and make sure that all 4 flow items can come from work item types, and that the flows, that your workflow states are representative of when something is new, active, waiting, or done. And And then you can create this layer and get the right kind of visibility. So, and I should also mention the other thing, if you are looking at this, the other thing that organizations will often be missing, it's actually both. It's debts and risks that are missing. Too often risk work, compliance work, and so on is just not visible. So a really big part of my view on this is we just need, and again, the taxonomy is all there and safe. We just need to make every one of those kinds of work visible. And to do that, the teams need to be making issues and to be celebrating, right? Because what we sometimes see is there's not enough psychological safety in an organization for teams to say that they just spent a sprint working on tech debt work, because that tech debt work is often never planned because it's not celebrated enough. So the teams are hiding it and so on. So yeah, that's really it. Just culturally, make sure all of these things are visible, and as part of product ownership or product management are planned. Tech debt work should be celebrated, because if it's not, it's coming to bite you. So and then yeah, that you've got this visibility layer into flow.
By the way, for Andrew and Google, first one for Andrew, it's what approach does SAFe take to metrics, and then also for Ubu, what are your thoughts about metrics, Ubu, here, and about flow?
So thanks, Nuno. So I just want to say one thing about what Mick said. Just want to add one thing to that, and then I'll sort of summarize how SAFe looks at metrics more holistically. What's so important about the flow metrics, and Mick mentioned this, is we're not measuring the people. We're not waiting for them to roll out new practices and measuring how effective those practices are. We're just watching the flow of the work. And we're using a simple taxonomy to measure how efficient that flow of work is. So I'm saying that because the recommendation actually I would give is you can start with these flow metrics even before you start moving to more agile ways of working. Although it's very difficult to think about how you might organize around value, by watching the flow of work, you're bringing visibility to the value streams that exist in the organization already. And there was a question also in chat, Nuno, about how do we get the management on board? You will be amazed at how revealing it is when you start showing them the lack of flow efficiency in some of these systems. Having these metrics as a starting point is a great way to get their support. So as Mick said, the flow metrics completely compatible with how SAFe looks at the continuous delivery pipeline. We talk about a few other categories. We talk about things like organizational health. How is the employee engagement? How much are we investing in things like training and skills development? We talk a bit about product metrics. So what is the customer satisfaction with the product? How is our product being used? And of course, we talk a little bit about business agility metrics in terms of assessing how the practices are being adopted. But really, we're trying to connect all these metrics back to the economic drivers. Are we seeing financial benefits, revenue improvements, return on investment? But the flow metrics, absolutely, Mick said it perfectly. They fit perfectly alongside the way people are thinking about improving and delivering flow within SAFe. And I know, Mick, we've talked lots in the past about it. It's just a great place for arts and teams to get started as well.
I want to touch on something I think that I completely agree. It's something so key to me what Andrew said there is we've had this, we've actually gone in and measured, used the flow metrics for waterfall value streams, right? And why would we do that? And it's really because once you see that, there was one organization, this was where we saw a flow efficiency of 1%, right? So that just means that things are so horrendously bad that hiring another developer is going to be counterproductive. Like it'll actually make things worse. That's how bad this environment was, and this was hundreds of people. So Andrew, you said like to get management on board. That's exactly it. Which is that we need to. The whole goal for our mutual goal is for us to make the business case for leaning faster and better into agility and investing more in agility and business agility, right? So yeah, you can use the flow metrics to just make the case of why even start with a journey. That call I was just on, their flow time for this organization was 36 months. So it takes 36 weeks, which is still really, really bad, right? It takes 36 weeks for the business to get value. And they are rolling out SAFe, they're gonna see this, but that's the key thing is for them to know that, and then to see when they've got the first art or two up and running, that went down by 4 weeks, that's a really, really big deal. And then of course it can just, we want this virtual cycle on the implementation roadmap, right? Because then it gets people motivated, stories of the success are told, and it's not they're going to, they're not going to 4 weeks as they should, or 2 weeks as a good tech company does, but they're actually seeing progress from a business point of view. Andrew, I think that the other key thing is that flow metrics alone are not enough, right? You need these other metrics that Andrew's talking about as well, but they can make the help you make the case with data, whether you're pre-implementation, during implementation, or trying to show the value of scaling.
Well, and you start seeing the connection between them as well, Mick, right? So then you start seeing the impact the improvements in flow metrics start having on the economic metrics, and then you start getting a very powerful case.
Some of the things that usually we see is, and perfectly, Andrew, you nailed it, which even before we start any change on the organization, whatever they think or they consider what is a change means, it's measure what you have today. So you can see an evolution and how the things are going. And by observing that perhaps there is value, but there is no flow, it should be the main topic. The thing is, and everybody that comes to these webinars, the hugest constraint is, the board is on board. Sometimes the board is not on board. If they are on board, 2 metrics is not enough. They want more metrics. Well, they want to talk the money metrics. That's the most important metrics. And having flow, it's the money metrics. And that's kind of all it matters. But also, as Mick said, today we want faster, which might being agile, and faster sales, faster return of investment. That's the agile part of the business. That's the blue ocean. That's what we are looking for. That's why we have Horizon 3, Horizon 2, Horizon 1. And we need to focus in investments also in Horizon 3. Even sometimes we say, well, it was just a loss of money. No, it's not. No, it's not. There is a story of a guy that made a mistake at IBM and they lost $1 million. And the guy was called to the board and it was kind of feared, saying, oh, I'm going to be fired. And said, why are you so afraid of what? And said, well, I will be fired. No, otherwise I will lose 1 million. I want you to tell the story to everyone of how we lost the $1 million, but what happened so we don't happen again. So, and in that case, I will never lose another $1 million. So I lose for other reasons, but not for these reasons. So we need to capitalize on that. And that was a smart thing. But today it's kind of, when we teach 2 metrics, even in a training, people say, it's just that? Yeah. But we need more. We want more. Look, that's the better is exponential increasing of sales. So what you do need to bring exponential increasing of sales. Now you want better, and that's the lean agile thing. So you want to remove all the waste because that will reduce your cost. And by reducing that cost, everything becomes more efficient in a such perspective. But of course, while you are uncovering, you cannot talk about efficiency because you don't know how to reduce that things. But you need to be focused on what you want to deliver. So pay attention to the flow. And later, you want to be safer. And that's the automation. And that's the DevOps. So faster, better, safer. Those are the 3 pillars that will sustain the flow of the value stream. And that's what you need to work on over the company. So why, and of course, later you want telemetry. Sure, we want telemetry. We want to know A/B tests if it's on software industry, but if it's on hardware industry, you want telemetry to know what button, what things people more use, what they are looking for, mean time to recover, and many, many others. But again, the money is kind of the highest metric, and flow, the delivery, is the highest importance to the board and to the company, because that will sustain jobs and that will make also other investments. So when you talk about the product today, and that's something that SAFe is always bringing about, organize around value. And wherever you do, what is just move away from cost center, right? Profit center. Well, no, the value stream needs to become a benefit center, and that's the most important thing. So if people continue to organize, if they want to do the transformation is never done. As soon as you start learning transformation, if you say my transformation it's done, again, it's a project. And what Mick teaches also in the book, It's not a project, it's a product. It's a continuous learning. It's a continuous journey. It's a continuous involvement, enrollment, learning. That's the good thing. Robert Bosch said, the guy that founded Bosch, he said, always try to do better. The problem is always. It's like the continuous improvement. The problem is not the improvement. The problem is the continuous. How you do that. So having a flow metrics in place that will support and provide better guidance than, and all these guardrails we will put also there will give you more guidance than anything else. Right?
Really well made point, Hugo. And I was just going to add one thing to that, just real quickly, was, you know, we've talked a lot about organizing around value, measuring flow. I suspect a lot of people are thinking that we're focusing mainly on the teams doing the work. But as we all know, if we only organize around value in that sense, and we don't organize our investments around value, then all the good work we do in terms of how we organize the people building the systems is really lost as we start targeting them with delivering projects. We start organizing our funding around projects. We start targeting some of those project-based metrics. So in SAFe, we think about organizing around value in 2 or 3 levels. We organize our portfolios of investments around value streams. We organize our release trains around value, and even the teams that sit on those release trains, as much as possible, we organize them around value as well. And I know, Mick, you know, you talk a lot about the challenges with project-based cost accounting and some of the friction that brings as well in your book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I completely agree with Hugo and with Andrew here. It is, you know, you need to have a definition for each value stream of who the customer is. It might be an internal customer, the customer might be a developer if you're actually building the development tools themselves, but there's always a customer and always a clear sense of value for that value stream, what that means, right? If it's a if the customer is another team, the value might be adoption of the API that you're producing for them, or the service that you're providing for them. But yeah, I think that's exactly it. Is that needs to be clear, move away from activities and cost, and everyone has for that value stream a shared sense of value. And the interesting thing is a model of how improving flow actually drives that value metric. And as Hugo said, you know, if the more you can relate that in many organizations to how you're going to drive sales or customer success or net promoter scores, the better. Because in the end, we're trying to accelerate flow to drive a business outcome. So
I think also it's hugely motivating. I know I feel motivated working in situations like that, where rather than focusing on what is the short-term deliverable, you've got this long-term attachment to the customer and a longer-term sense of the value that you and your team are delivering. And it just changes the whole perspective from what are we doing today to what are we doing to support this product over its lifetime. And it's a huge, huge shift.
Okay, since we are reaching 10 minutes to the end and we have no more questions, I would like to ask you guys a question. That is, you were talking about how to measure metrics, how to move from project to products. But my question is, you guys for sure described some failures in digital transformations. And the question is, what do you believe is the root cause for those failures? And have you ever seen a failure in a SAFe implementation? What happened? What are the root causes? What happens when this goes sideways?
who wants to take this first?
Sorry?
I don't mind saying a few quick things, but Mick, if you want to jump in, go ahead.
Go for it, Andrew. Yeah,
well, just 2 things. I'll be real quick. So number 1, of course, you know, there's a reason that the value stream workshop is so early on in the SAFe implementation roadmap, because you can put in place the practices and the events and the activities, but unless you're really moving to a network view of the organization, thinking about how you organize around the flow of value, you will be challenged. But the other thing I would call out as another thing I see as a regular challenge is there's a real technical investment needed as well, because we're going to be asking Agile teams to be integrating their work every 2 weeks across arts that are formed of maybe 100 people, maybe multiple arts. And that's a real technical proficiency, both in terms of the architecture of the systems, but also the demands on the people building those systems. And that sometimes is a big shock building software at scale, you talk about it, Mick, you know, it's a difficult thing to master. So I think the technical side as well, Nuno, can catch people out if they don't invest enough in it, which I guess, Mick, that makes good sense for talking about the risks and paying down the debts that you talked about earlier. But I see that sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, Andrew. And I rarely see that point raised, right? Is that there is a significant technical investment, right? And it's, you know, we have a sense for what good looks like. Like if you look at really large organizations, everything, the infrastructure is there to automate releases. You know, everything is in trunk. It's basically, you've got the technical practices are in place to make, you know, shipping the software, all of the automated testing that's needed and so on easier. And oftentimes what will happen is the starting point won't actually have enough of that technical infrastructure. This is why one thing I think this is one of the, related to one of the causes of failure that I wish I'd spend a bit more time on in the book, because I enumerated a few. But, you know, when I look at these product value streams in an organization, one of the, you know, I think of this as 3 layers, right? And, you know, imagine sort of the dependencies between the teams, what the business is looking for, and the rest. Like, you've got this top layer, which is the business products, right? That's what the business people are fixated on. That's the mobile and web experiences, and that's what's going to drive sales and drive partnerships and such. But underneath that, you've actually got dependencies on your platform products. And the platform products might be a data pipeline. You know, the platform products might be some back office systems that need modernization. They should really be where, you know, a lot of the businesses, the way the core business runs, is captured. And so and then beneath that, actually, you've got, and this is what Andrew was just referring to, you've actually got what we call the value stream network, the tool network, right? That's the ways that developers, and that needs, at a good tech company, that's always treated as a product, right? The delivery pipeline itself is a product, right? And so what will happen so often is all this effort will focus on the business products, whereas all the bottlenecks and everything that's waiting is below that. Because if you don't invest in your tool network, you don't have what Andrew says, you don't have the technical practices that make the adoption of SAFe much easier. And so I think the key thing that I've been noticing, and this is definitely one of the main causes, and I don't see sort of the failures as root causes, as it's these, you know, you've got these 3 or 4 problems between, you know, cost centers, underinvestment in the technology platforms, and then the wrong business metrics, and the transformation's tanked, right? So I think that one, I do want to focus in on that one that Andrew's pointed out, making sure that you've got product value streams for your platform products, and that you're treating your actual pipeline as a product, that realization, and applying all the same principles of SAFe, by the way, right? That every one of those internal products has its own roadmap and is measured and treated as a value stream and has investment and has its own art is just critical. And then there's an art for the delivery pipeline itself. You know, maybe that one will start smaller, but that's where the SREs go. That's where all the DevOps, you know, implementation and efforts go, and so on. That's where, you know, that's what's helping implement the tool chain that you need. So yeah, I think that's a major failure point, is only treating the business products as the things that matter in a SAFe transformation. You need those other layers and products, and organizations that have gone through this successfully, it's incredible how much they actually invest in those lower layers to make all of the work for the teams easier. And as I mentioned in Project to Product, BMW's most, you know, important product is not any of its cars, it's the plant, right? They invest more in that than in any car.
Yeah,
because that makes everyone more productive.
Agree. You know, also one of the things that I've been facing all the time and struggling is when you have the engagements with companies that usually they don't have the consciousness about what is a value stream and how it works.
Yeah.
And basically what they have is components and not even a team. So it's kind of, you remember hard drives, fragmentation, that's what comes to my mind. So they are fragmented. So a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, everything spread there all over the place. A lot of handovers. So transaction cost, holding cost, everything is high, everything is hard and difficult. And perhaps 10% of the people involved, it will be sufficient to make that service or whatever it is. And every time we come with a SAFe implementation, we talk about, look, let's move to a product. and how is that product built in, and where is the value streams for as the 3 layers, for example, from the business to the delivery. And when we talk to them, they are lost, completely lost. They don't have any clue idea about what the product means, what is the product, what is the flow, what value stream means, how to do a workshop of the value stream. We need almost 100 people just to get where it comes and where it starts and where it goes, and how they contribute to the success of what they sell or what they deliver. And then it comes internal customer, external customer, and it's so huge and complicated because it seems where it starts and where it ends, and it's all this part of the process. It's quite important, all this education and all the learning about how these things work, and then they can start understanding how to put and fit the piece together. The thing is, the challenge is how they come from, and Mick, perhaps you want to add something in here as well, from very tiny components, very tiny services spread between 2-3 countries to a product or to a value stream that is meaningful and that provides some metrics as well. So we understand where it comes the flow, where is the money, and how this can be a productive and a successful product.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly chime in there. I agree that a lot of these organizations, they are a mess when they start. So in terms of understanding what their products and value streams are. So I think, we all, whether we work for them or we're helping them, we all need to help them understand that and understand it without boiling the ocean. Because, oftentimes they'll go like, well, we have 800, 600 applications and tell me how these align into product value streams and so on. And is it more around customer experience, or is it more around what we sell in terms of SKUs and so on? So I would just focus on, just get started on the implementation roadmap, just pick a portion of the portfolio, help them establish what those are, start measuring, and that's it. But it's a really good point. I think that I've seen like 6 months of deadlock on trying to create the ultimate product portfolio. No, just start somewhere, measure it, then refactor it, right? And use the arts as a way to drive the definition of value streams. So
the thing is how they see that component they have, they don't have a product. They don't have a component. So to build something in AI, they have 3 teams with 5 softwares. It's always about the tools. So I run this tool, you run that tool, Andy runs another tool. So the junction of these 3 tools will provide something to the internal customer. And it's very hard for them to understand, so where is the value of all this?
Yep, exactly.
How we measure this? Andy?
Well, just to
we
finish on that.
Our time box, and I'm not sure. Okay, you can go. But after...
2 sentences. I was just going to say, following on from Hugo said, and the value is going to change over time as well. So not only are we thinking about how to organize around value in terms of what it looks like today for our customers and our markets, in 2 or 3 years' time, what was valuable now may no longer be valuable. So we need to build organizations that can learn and adapt, less about identifying a fixed way of working for the next 5 or 10 years, and more thinking about how we can inspect and adapt continuously.
Yeah.
Okay. As we are reaching our time box, I would like to make a question to Mick. To wrap up, in a few words, basically, I'm going to ask you the question that brought us here, that is, so moving from project to product, why does it matter? What are the key takeaways that we can tell our audience here for today's sessions?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it's you have to understand for your organization or the one you work with why it matters, and it's what you heard Hugo say, right? Is you want to drive business performance, and that might be innovation, that might be growing sales exponentially, but there's a business driver on that that you want to unlock or you want to drive, right? I think the amount of trapped value in organizations, the fact that you can actually increase flow by 20% by reducing work in progress, that's insane, right? That's how much inefficiency there is. So it's really to unlock that value and help your company thrive, and then fundamentally help your people thrive, right? Because when we remove these impediments, when we remove bottlenecks, we've got much happier staff, much happier teams, and a much more innovative organization. So.
Perfect. And Hugo, any final words for our audience?
For me, I think that's simple as that. And sometimes people come with more things, more OKRs, flight levels. People are not enough or more. It's like when you do 100 meters, you always, even if you don't have the barriers, you say, I need barriers. So stop wasting time with more stuff on top of all this, because what you want is to move straight forward. And as Mick just said, it's kind of just get the flow. Let's see where it goes. Move these impediments, bottlenecks, dependencies. That will take you perhaps sometimes more than a year. And then you can discuss other things. So when you come with, when you come with the PI planning, you will see so much of that, and it will take a lot of time, because sometimes it's about people, giving them the trust, the confidence to trust on others, on each other's, and say, look, we are working for the same thing. Now we have a common goals, and let's stick to that. And sometimes they come with more tools and more things and more things and more things. It's quite the opposite. When the time comes, it will emerge. You have the need and you try. For the time being, is about having provocative discussions and questions about how we're going to do this. But let's do it together. Perhaps we go slower, but we go much more far away than if we go just by ourselves. So that's kind of my takeaway. And I also love Mick's book, and I have it all the time here. It's signed by him. Thanks.
And I was just going to say, Mick, the book From Product to Product, the way I think about it in short terms is that organizations typically cared about projects, but it's customers that care about the products.
Yeah.
And so by thinking in terms of products, we're automatically taking a customer-centric viewpoint.
Yes.
Customers don't talk about our projects, and it changes the whole way we think about what we deliver and the whole way we think about how we organize to improve that delivery. So yeah.
And customers don't talk about Agile either. They want better, safer, and faster. And of course, if that provides them cheaper, because less waste, less cost, so it will be much more competitive in the market. That's what they're looking for. Exactly. That's what Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX, is cutting the price of any space travel, is making that being able to do it every month, and sooner or later it will do every 2 weeks, and perhaps in the future will do every week. And that's what made everything change, and that's what the customers buy. They don't buy Agile teams, they don't buy that. What they buy is better, safer, and faster, which that will tells them if they like the product, I'm sure they will buy that. They will not buy the projects. That's just the cost. And what was the benefit?
All right. So to wrap up, guys, don't forget, go to Mick's website and buy his book if you want to know further about this topic. And if you want to know more about SAFe, we have our upcoming courses. We have a certified SAFe Agile product owner on April 12, 13, and 14. We have also in April certified SAFe Lean portfolio management. On June, we have a certified SAFe Agilist leading SAFe. And then in September, we will have the certified SAFe program consultant implementing SAFe. If you want to enroll in any of these courses, just go to the website, theagilethinkers.com, and you will find all the information available there. Thank you guys for joining us today. We will be seeing you in the next webinar.
Thanks, Nuno. Thanks, Hugo. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Nuno. Thanks for everything. Take care, my friends.